Mining community, welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep, the mining podcast. And today's guest is Ben Turney, who's the CEO of Kavango Resources, who are a mineral exploration company listed on the London Stock Exchange, focused on mining within the friendly jurisdiction of Botswana. Ben has a background in the financial markets and has also worked as an investigative writer. So he's been involved in many transactions within the mining industry. And he's here today to tell us a little bit about Kavango Resources and to give us an update on the exciting things that they're actually getting involved in now. So that's welcome, Ben, to the podcast. How you doing, Ben?
I'm great, thanks, Rob. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. I'm good. It's a Monday at the time of this recording. So start of a new week. And I wondered if you can give us a bit of a background about yourself, about your career. Obviously, I mentioned you're in the financial markets and you were a investigative writer. So be interested to hear a little bit about your background and your career, and then we can talk about Kavango Resources.
Yeah, sure. So I came into financial markets about 12 years ago. I've had a pretty unconventional rise to where I am today. So I haven't gone through any of like the traditional routes. You know, I didn't work my way up through a corporation. I didn't come in through the city. I came in originally as a private investor, as a writer. I've always enjoyed writing. I like to think I'm pretty good at it. And I found sort of very quickly that my skills were in demand early on. So this was towards the tail end of the last big mining boom, sort of like 2009, 2010, around about that time. I spent a few years doing sort of standard corporate work in the space, so looking at small cap exploration plays. And I very quickly found that there was a lot that I was pretty uneasy with. There was a lot that I saw in terms of how companies were behaving, how city professionals were behaving, how investors were behaving, that I didn't really like. And through a series of happenstance, I suppose, I ended up working for a website called Share Profits, which I know obviously is controversial to this day. You know, Tom Winifrith, the owner, is very well known. I spent a number of years working under Tom. We had our ups and downs in that relationship, but overall, I think we got to a good place in the end. And I ended up as editor of Share Profits. And during that time, I did a lot of investigative work. So I looked at sort of basically white collar fraud, looking at sort of some of the more nefarious things that were happening in our space. And it was a really good grounding, because I think what it did was it opened my eyes up to the reality of this market. So while I'm a passionate believer in free markets and all the good that they can do, the innovation, the creativity, the economic development, how they can really change people's lives for the better. It is also a bit like playing with fire, and you know, while fire can nourish and sustain, it can also burn, and people have to be careful. They have to understand the environment they're working in. So I spent a good number of years doing that. I moved from there into shareholder activism. I led a number of successful activist campaigns looking to replace boards on various companies. But each one of those situations I took over was really sort of at death's door. So there wasn't really much to salvage. You know, gave it a good shot from 2016 through to about 2019. But unfortunately, those companies that I took over wasn't able to bring those back, although watch this space. There might be a bit of news on both of them. I can't say too much at the moment, but we've got a few things that I've been lining up. One of the things about me is I'm not the sort of person who gives up. Once I've made a commitment to something, I see it through to the end, and hopefully there'll be sort of some positive news at the end of what's been quite a long story with those companies. But that really gave me a great grounding in the practicalities, the nuts and bolts, the mechanics of actually running these sorts of businesses. And that's what really brought me up to Kavango up to this day. I've got quite a successful investor relations company that's private, that's mine. We do all of our work in North America. We do some in the UK. So I brought into this a lot of entrepreneurial experience, a lot of business experience, and of course a lot of investor relations experience as well. And it all seems to have come together at exactly the right time and exactly the right opportunity.
Right, that's good to hear. And obviously you've had a varied background and probably seen a lot of things, which we'll probably go into a little bit later on in this podcast. So wondered if you can tell us a little bit about Kavango Resources.
So Kavango was set up in 2012 by Mike Moles and Hilary Gumbo. We're a metals exploration company with 15,000 square kilometres of ground in Botswana. So we're a single jurisdiction focused business, and we're looking across a number of different geological models, different geological regions within the country. But our competitive edge is our skill set and our abilities in geophysics. Botswana is a fantastic jurisdiction to work in. It's been a very stable country, a very developed economy, very clearly defended legal system, clear transfer of power. I mean, it really is a great environment to operate a company in. But one of the things that's held Botswana's geological or mining industry back a bit, even though mining is important over there, is the presence of these Kalahari sands. So the country is about the size of France. I think it's actually slightly larger than France, but 70% of it is covered by at time quite thick desert, which obviously restricted historic exploration. The geology just doesn't come to surface, which is how a lot of historic mines and large-scale mines were found. So Hilary and Mike, they viewed what's Botswana really as being largely a virgin territory, and because of significant updates and upgrades in modern remote sensing technology, and so using geophysical methods. Hilary's vision was that we could use this technology, the company could use this technology to penetrate through those Kalahari sands, see deeper into the ground, build up much clearer geological models and maps of what is actually subsurface, with a view to identifying drill targets to find the next generation of large-scale mineral deposits. So that was the original vision for Kavango, and that's the vision that we're living today. And certainly over the last 18 months, the story has really started to take off, and we're seeing some great results in the field. And we've now got a number of really exciting projects, in particular in the Kalahari Suture Zone, where we're drilling for the biggest target the company's identified to date. But our risk is somewhat spread because while on the one hand, obviously we're single jurisdiction, because of the nature of the projects we're working on, we're looking at different geological settings, so different deposit models. But our belief is through use of the technology that we have available to us today, we can unlock those and make commercial discoveries.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your business model and how can investors expect to see a return?
Yeah, it's a great question in this space. It's always one that is unanswered. You can sort of present this blue sky vision, and everyone can get very exciting about finding the next major metal deposit. But then, how are investors actually going to see a return? Now, one of the mistakes that I've seen, from personal experience a lot in this industry is that when small companies find a major deposit, they'll typically then go and try and develop that deposit into a mine themselves. So they try to transition from being a minerals exploration company to a mining development business. They're two completely different business models. We are very much a minerals exploration play. We know what our core skills are. We know where our abilities, where our talents lie. And because of the nature of the opportunity in Botswana, we've got a huge amount of opportunity that's open in front of us. So our business model is very much focused on, we make the discoveries, we develop the discoveries up to the point that they can be sold, but there's obviously still enough blue sky built into that. We want to obviously achieve maximum sell-on price, but then to hand the projects over to much more established firms, companies that have those core competencies that are required to develop mines, because it's a very complex and challenging business to pursue. So I think it's a huge mistake that a lot of companies in our space make, and a lot of it really comes down to vanity. You see a lot of directors out there who they obviously like to pay themselves the big bucks. They like to sort of run large companies as they see it. So they try and take these projects on, and I'm afraid to say ultimately they ruin them. From our point of view, we think there's a huge amount of opportunity and upside in our model by really focusing on what we're best at, looking to cash in on what we're best at. And obviously once we've made one discovery and we've sold that, well, we have a pipeline of other opportunities for us to pursue. There's so much opportunity in Botswana that we think that this is going to be huge for us and our shareholders.
Just going back to your background, how did your your background align with the company? And what brought you to Kavango Resources?
Well, if I could answer that question a bit in reverse. So what originally brought me to Kavango was in 2018, through my investor relations company. I was actually introduced to Mike Moles when Kavango was first listing. So as I mentioned earlier, the company was set up in 2012, but it didn't actually list until summer 2018. But in January 2018, I was introduced to Mike. I had a probably 3-hour Zoom call with him in the end. Mike does like to talk, anyone who's ever spoken to him. But just listening to him and listening to his technical vision for what's possible in Botswana, I found it absolutely fascinating and sort of really drawn to this. I thought that Mike, and obviously subsequently I got to meet Michael Foster, who recently retired. I thought these were really stand-up guys. They were honest. They were really pursuing this vision, this dream that they had for Kavango. This wasn't the sort of the type of company that I'd seen a lot of in sort of other areas within our space, where you question, what are the directors, what are their real motivations. With these guys, it was clear from the very beginning that they were serious about what they wanted to do, and it was a very big vision as well, particularly in the Kalahari Suture Zone, where we have this huge project that we're working on at the moment. So I put in quite a significant amount of money into the IPO personally, and so I backed it from the start. I stayed in touch with them over the following years on a fairly loose basis. So we did a bit of sort of ad hoc IR for them here and there, but they didn't engage fully. And unfortunately for them, by April 2020, things weren't working out so well. The share price was down to about 0.8 pence, but there was still this huge narrative. I felt there was some things that could be changed, a bit of fine tuning, and we could really get things moving again. So a financing was put together, £400,000, and as part of that financing, I was asked if I could go in and act as a consultant to work with Mike and Michael to help them sort out the communication side of their business. So over the rest of the year, we had a lot of success with that. That culminated in November 2020. We raised £2 million at 2.75 pence. So the share price had gone from 0.8. I think it peaked at about 3.3. We raised at 2.75, £2 million. That was the most that Kavango had ever raised by this point. I helped put that deal together through the new broker that I brought in, and things were going very, very well. And I was very flattered then in early December to get a call from Mike asking if I'd like to join the board, with a view ultimately to becoming CEO. Michael Foster was coming towards the end of his career. He was thinking about what to do when he retired, and based on the work that we'd done together over the course of 2020, they took quite a big risk with me, because at that point it wasn't clear, how would I work out in a role like this. It's the first time I'd sort of taken this step into the public arena. While quite a lot of what I've done has been in the public domain, it was the first time I'd taken on this type of role in a listed vehicle. So they took that chance, and I'm delighted to say so far it's worked out. In terms of the skills that I brought and from the experience I have, I think there's one thing in particular that's really enabled me to do what I've done over the last 12 months and the effect that I've had on the business. I mean, of course, it's been a team effort, but I am aware of my contribution, and I think it's my ability to see the market for what it really is. I'm very pragmatic, ruthlessly pragmatic at times sometimes, but I think I see things very, very clearly, and that really means that helps us avoid, I think, a number of the mistakes that other executive directors can make when they're handling the market, and some of the less nice things that can happen in this space. So for example, we will never allow a short to close out a short position in a placing with us. That for us is an absolute red line, and I've put that message out there, and I think people have understood that, and as a result of that, I think it would be a very brave person who would short Kavango Resources. And if you look at our share price performance over the last 12 months compared to a lot of our peers, I think that knowledge that is out there, I think, has actually helped us a great deal. So I think that's probably the main skill and experience that I've had. It's really what I've learned about how this market actually operates, not how people think it operates, or even worse, think it should operate.
And obviously you've been thrown in at the deep end as the CEO. How has the job met your expectations?
Yeah, thrown in at the deep end. I think thrown in at the deep end, sort of fully clothed in my boots, it feels like at times. Yeah, look, it's been a steep learning curve. I mean, obviously this was new to me. This type of business, the nature of it is very complicated. It's on the other side of the world as well. So there've been all sorts of challenges over the last 12 months. In terms of what I know now and sort of what I knew then, I'm probably about to start singing "Is It Rod Stewart" at you, maybe. But no, it certainly hasn't sort of been what I expected. I think sort of when I came into this, I had a number of ideas. Those were pretty much blown out of the water straight away. But the actual experience of working in this company, I feel like I've taken to it very quickly. I've quickly learned the lessons that I needed to, and above all, I don't really feel we've made many mistakes along the way so far. I think that pretty much we've taken the right steps. I've also been extremely fortunate, and I'm glad I've remembered to say this. I've been surrounded by great people. The support that I've had in this business has been phenomenal from top to bottom. So I think we've got a great team. We've got a great future ahead of us. We're well financed with great projects, and it really does feel like everything's come together really nicely for 2022.
And can you tell us a little bit about the team and sort of what skills or what advice?
Obviously at the top, we've got the board of directors. There are Mike and Michael, who I've got the long-standing relationship with. We've had our we've had our challenges over the last 12 months. I'm not sure they quite knew what they got themselves into when they brought me in. There's some things I've wanted to do that they weren't overly happy with. There's some things they wanted to do that I wasn't overly happy with. But I think we've found really good common ground between us and been able to move the company forward very positively. We've, of course, got David Smith as our chairman. David joined the board at the same time I did. David was the company's lawyer. He was a senior partner at Druce's, and he's made the transition from career lawyer to non-executive chairman, I think, absolutely brilliantly. I mean, he's been the cool head in the room when things have got a little bit heated, and has enabled us and helped us all to find a way forward for the best interest of the business, which has been extremely helpful. And David's advice and guidance has been a real support to me over the year. And of course, then there's Hilary. Without Hilary, this business wouldn't exist, and we wouldn't be anywhere near where we are today. His vision, his understanding, his deep sort of affinity with modern geophysical methods has given Kavango such a compelling cutting edge that I can't imagine where the company would be without him, to be honest. And what Hilary also has provided us as well is the link between what's happening in Botswana and obviously what's happening at the UK PLC. So while Hilary obviously is a Zimbabwe national and he's much less involved in the day-to-day now, we've built a team on the ground that's performing all of the operational work, and Hilary's role now is much more geophysics. But over the last 12 months, Hilary's really helped sort of make sure that the transition has worked very, very smoothly, so that we've been able to make the improvements we have in the business. Now, alongside obviously the board of directors, we've also made a number of key hires over the last 12 months. So we've brought in a new exploration manager called John Lauderdale. He's had a career working all over Africa, and I mean, this guy is he's a human force of nature in terms of the effect he's had on the business. He's been with us 6 months now on the ground. He's transformed our local operations. We have Tips Ngusani, who's formerly the CEO of the Botswana Geological Institute. So he's a very well-known figure in this space in Botswana, and he's taking care of the corporate side of the company down in Botswana. And having Tips on board, again, lots of experience, lots of contacts. He's just making sure that we are ready to grow and that the infrastructure we have in place is suitable for a business as ambitious as ours. We then also have a number of other people helping us on the technical side. Jeremy Bredd is one. So Jeremy's a Canadian geophysicist. He'd worked in Botswana previously, and Jeremy's input since I've known him since last March, I mean, it's been a huge education, because of course, coming into this role, one of my big gaps was the fact that I just don't have the geological or geophysical experience. This is not my area. So being surrounded by these real experts, real professionals, people who are just fantastic at what they do, has given me a wonderful opportunity to learn, which is how I'm able to talk to our shareholders and talk to the market as confidently as I am, because I'm getting the best possible preparation from the best possible people.
You've been very active promoting Kavango. Are you trying to sell some shares, or is there something a little bit more to it than that?
There's definitely a lot more to it. Look, I mean, my job here, let's not make any bones about it. I am here to sell stock. I mean, that's clear. We're in a very competitive market space. We're a business that's reliant on raising funds to go out and deliver our operational plans. We don't generate revenue. I think this is a taboo a lot of CEOs are not comfortable talking about. Well, I am, because it's my job. So I'm here obviously to present the story in the best possible light I can. But for anyone who knows me and anyone who's followed my career over the last 10 years, what they also will know about me is that I will do the right thing. I'm not the sort of person who would simply put my name and my reputation to a company that I didn't truly believe in. So yes, I am here to sell stock and to sell our vision, present to the market the blue sky vision that we're so excited about. But I'm also here because we are so excited about it. I mean, there is so much going on underneath the surface in this company, and of course, we update the market as quickly as we can when we have anything definitive to report. But there's a lot that's going on that at the moment isn't quite definitive. It's nearly there, and I'm desperate to get out and start telling people about what we're actually doing. But of course there are rules and regulations around this kind of thing. And what I'd say is that maybe ask that question to me again in 12 months time, and let's see where we are. And hopefully by then you'll see that there is a lot more to this business than just simply a stock promote.
Yes, certainly. A lot of investors are nervous of small cap stocks and penny shares, and sort of tend to stay away from them. Are they right or are they wrong? Or are there certain companies that may be different from other companies? And maybe what should investors look out for?
I think it's a tough question to answer that. I think the answer is both right and wrong. This space can be a dangerous one. I mean, you are swimming, it's a piranha pool, and you have to be aware of that when you come into it. I think, the idea of sort of a lot of the protections that are meant to be there for private investors and safeguards, in reality, they aren't so effective. So there is that Latin phrase, caveat emptor, buyer beware. It really is up to the individual to take responsibility for their own purchasing decisions. Now, I mean, I could go on about sort of areas of the market that I think, it would be better to improve. But what I would say is that with the right approach, the right focus, the right discipline, the right research, there's a lot that we as individuals can do to reduce that risk. So while, yes, there are a lot of risks inherent in the market itself because of the way the market functions, there is also incredible opportunity. And if you're able to find those companies that are genuine businesses being run with genuine intent, with genuine upside, and a very clearly defined funding strategy, because that is very important. And in terms of what we've done with Kavango, I look at the warrant structures we put in place to provide us with access to funds as we deliver on our operational plans. If you can sort of meet all of those criteria, then you can make life-changing amounts of money in this space. But it's not an easy space. I think people who just simply want to have an easy investment, put some money into a stock and just wait for it to grow because they've read about it on a bulletin board or on Twitter, you're going to get eaten alive at the end of the day. You really do have to be prepared to come and put the effort in, put the hours in, put the dedication in. And if you can do that, then you can see and to generate phenomenal returns. So definitely an area to be careful in, but also if done in the right way, it can change your life.
Um, as I mentioned in the introduction, you used to be an investigative writer. I wonder if you just tell us a little bit more about this and some of the things that you may have worked on, and how this has probably helped you in your role today.
But I think my biggest the biggest story that I worked on and where I learned the most was about naked shorting. I really got to understand a lot about the mechanics of naked shorting and how that happens in the UK. I mean, it's technically meant to be illegal, but there are certain parties that they do this. It still happens today, and I think it's an area that a lot of CEOs in particular can be very naive to be perfectly frank. And the problem with shorting is the way a lot of these shorts can close out in the small cap space is they'll close out through the placings. Now, as soon as a company accepts money from a short to close out a painting, that's it. It's almost game over, because all you've done then at that point is you've painted a huge target on your back and said that you're prepared to accept the money once, you'll be prepared to accept it a second time. And this is why we've got such a strict policy of this with Kavango. We are only looking for long only money, people who will look to invest into the company because they believe in us, they believe in our vision, they believe in our ability to execute our plans. We're not looking to get into any of this sort of market shenanigans simply to keep the lights on and pay the board. So I think probably the one main experience I draw from in this space is that.
And sort of lastly, assuming that you're right about the small cap exploration stocks present obviously a strong opportunity, what's the outlook for the market? And then subsequently, what's the outlook for Kavango over the next 12 to 18 months?
Well, I can really only talk about my space. And in terms of metals exploration, I'm extremely bullish. You just need to look at metal prices over the last 18 months, nearly 2 years now, and they've been through the roof. There is, as far as I'm concerned, a tidal wave of money heading in our direction. Now, if you look at what's happened over the last 10 years, since the last major mining boom, there's been hardly any investment in metals exploration. Stockpiles, of course, across the majors have been diminishing as they've worked through, various mines, and production has come off stream, but there hasn't been that supply to replace that, to replenish that. Of course, we've now had COVID and we have all these, the pandemic, and we have these stimulus measures that are being put in place, huge infrastructure programs that are being planned, which of course has led to huge demand at a time when supply has been restricted. And of course, with the inflationary pressures that we're seeing out here now because of fiscal and monetary policy, US inflation last week was up at 7%. This is enormous for our space. It tells us there is a huge amount of cash out there just waiting to find a home. And my belief is that we are a few transactions, so a few M&A transactions where some smaller exploration companies, hopefully like Kavango once we've made a discovery, but I think you see a few of those get bought out and we're going to see some real fireworks in this space as speculative money pours in.
Ben, really appreciate your time in taking the time to tell us a little bit about Kavango Resources and obviously your experiences within the industry. If our audience wants to reach out to you, if they've got any questions around obviously your expertise, and if they want to know a little bit more about Kavango Resources, how can they go about doing that? And are you across sort of social media platforms?
Yeah, easy enough. So I'm on Twitter. I'm pretty active on Twitter. So I'm Ben_Turney. My DMs are open, so feel free to message me anytime. Also on our announcements as well. My email address is on all of our announcements. So I'm happy to talk to anybody who wants to talk about Kavango. I'm always happy to answer any questions from shareholders. So please do get in touch.
Yeah, Ben, like I said, really appreciate your time. Wish you well over the next 12 months, and perhaps you can come on at the end of the year or even in next year after. Hopefully you've got some, obviously you're going to have a lot of news flow throughout the year. But when you've obviously made some significant discoveries or really some big news, then I'm happy for you to come back on the podcast later this year or next year.
Brilliant. Thanks very much for having me, Rob.
No worries. Hope you guys enjoyed listening to Ben. Appreciate if you can share this episode amongst obviously people within the industry and even, like I said, people outside of the mining industry that may want to invest in the industry, because as Ben mentioned, there's going to be a lot of money entering our sector. So hopefully people don't miss the boat and listen to some of these podcasts. We'll give them a good idea of what they need to do. So appreciate your continued support. And until next time, happy mining.